Welcome back to Miss Eddie's Math Movies, where it's cute to be a square. Today we're doing section 2.1, which is all about segment bisectors. Since we're learning about segment bisectors, you might be wondering, what is a bisector? Or what does it mean to bisect? Well, bi means two, and sect means to cut or to slice. So we're cutting into two parts or into halves. So bisect means to divide into two congruent parts. So basically to cut into half, to cut it into two pieces. So a segment bisector is a segment, ray, line, or plane that cuts a segment in half, or that divides it into two. And we'll draw a picture to go with this. So here's a segment, and the bisector divides it into two parts. So let's do a ray, for example. This ray just sliced this segment in half. And to show that, we put little tick marks here. That means that this half is equal to this half. A midpoint, well, when you hear the word mid, you should think middle. So this is a point in the middle. A point that divides a segment into two congruent parts. Right? It's right in the middle. Do the symbol, congruent parts. Remember, congruent means the same or equal. So same length. So it's very similar to our other picture. We've got a segment, but now instead of a line cutting in half, it's just or a ray, it's just a point that's right in the middle. So once again, we use tick marks to show that it's directly in the middle. So let's do some examples with this. M is the midpoint. So as soon as I see that word midpoint, I'm like, okay, it's in the middle. Midpoint, middle. So it's in the middle of AB. So find AM and MB. Remember, if there's nothing above it, that means length. So I need to find the length from A to M. Well, the whole thing is 26, and M is directly in the middle. It's cutting 26 right in half, just chopping it right in half. So 26 right in half is 13. So this side is 13, and this side is 13 because it's two congruent parts. AM is half of the total, which we said, half of 26 is 13. AM equals 13, and MB equals 13. Not too bad, right? Now example 2 is just a little bit different, but applying the same philosophy. Now P is the midpoint. So P is right in the middle. We need to find the length from P to S and the length from R to S. All right. Well, they tell us that this half is 7. That means that this half over here must also be 7. Halves have to be equal. So the distance from P to S is 7, and the distance from R to S is 7 plus 7, which is 14. We have to do 2 times 7 to give us 14. PS was the other half is 7, and the whole thing from R to S is 14. How are examples 1 and 2 different? Well, example 1 gives the whole length, and example 2 only gives you half the length. So using those two examples, I want you to go to the checkpoints, and I want you to do both of these now. You need to find the length of DE and EF, and the length of NO and MO. Notice, you know it's right in the middle. These two tick marks mean it's equal. This half is equal to this half. Same thing over here. So use those tick marks to figure that out. Now we're going to do the same idea, but with a little bit of algebra. It says line L, right here, is the segment bisector. All right, we got to remember segment. Bisector means, bi means cut in half. All right, so I'm going to write myself a little note there. So we're going to have two equal parts, right? Something's getting sliced right in half. Find x. So this line is like a knife just cutting that segment right in half. Well, I know if the segment got cut in half that this half has to be equal to this half. Okay, so AM equals MB, that makes sense. So 5x equals 35. This half equals this half. So I need to solve for x. To solve for x, I divide both sides by 5, and I get x equals 7. Let's see if I can box that, make it a little bit more clear. So very same idea, but a little bit of algebra involved. All right. The midpoint formula. You learned about this in algebra. We'll see how much of it you remember. So we're trying to find the point in the middle. To find a point in the middle, you average. Just like if you had a test score of a 70 and an 80, your average would be 75 because 75 is right in the middle of 70 and 80. That's the same kind of thing we're going to do here. To find the middle of a line segment, we're going to average the x's together and average the y's together. That's your midpoint formula. And I'll show you what I mean. Find the coordinates of the midpoint of AB. For A is 1, 2, and B is at 7, 4. So I'm trying to find the middle of these 2 points. So first, I'm going to look at the x's. I need to find the middle of 1 and 7. So I'm going to average those together. 1 plus 7 divided by 2. That's what my formula says. Average the x's. And if you want to put this in your calculator, make sure you put this in parentheses. Or we can do it in our head. 1 plus 7 is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So the middle of the x's is 4. Now we need to find the middle of the y's. So maybe you already know in your head what's directly between 2 and 4. Maybe you already know, but I'll average it out for you. 2 plus 4 divided by 2. I'm averaging it. 2 plus 4 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. That makes sense. 3 is right in between 2 and 4. So now let's graph it just to make sure it looks right. A is at 1, 2, and B is at 7, 4. Connect this. And so their midpoint is at 4, 3. 4, 3. Does that look like the middle to you? Looks like we did a pretty good job. So graphing is always a good way to check. All right, now you get to find the coordinates of the midpoint. So average your x's together and average your y's together. This is M Cubed signing out.